I have the great honor of speaking to Dr. Rachel Levmore, Toenet Rabbanit. She was Avigail Zichronah Livracha's first chavuta when it came to becoming a Toenet Rabbanit. And I'm honored. I'm honored and privileged. I'm grateful to hear your journey with Avigail and what you want to share with us regarding her legacy and things that you would want to share with the world, what you knew about Avigail and your journey with Avigail.
It's really my pleasure. I miss Abigail very much. We really had an amazing journey together, which not many women were privileged enough to have. We learned Torah on the highest level possible in the history of learning that Jewish women could attain. And we first met on the first day of what was called then the Institute for the Training of Women Rabbinical Court Advocates. A Rabbinical Court Advocate is in essence a lawyer of the halakha. And in Israel, where the Bet Din Rabbani, the rabbinical court system, is part of the legal system in Israel. So in order to practice in America, you would say a toyen, have to be licensed, just like an attorney needs a license to practice law. A Toen Rabbani or Toenet Rabbanit needs a license to practice law, the law of halakha, in the Beit Din Rabbani representing litigants. And the Beit Din Rabbani Mamlachti has sole jurisdiction over matters of personal status, meaning marriage and divorce. Until 1990, approximately, there was no such thing as a female rabbinical court advocate, as a Toenet Rabbanit. And Rabbi Shlomo Riskin opened the first Institute for the Training of Women Rabbinical Court Advocates. We were groundbreakers because men who became Toenim Rabbanim, I likened it to a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate. In other words, one would study for smicha and learn two parts and be tested on two parts of the Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim and Yerodea, and then you get smicha and be a rabbi. A step up would be to learn a selected simanim, chapters, simanim, from the other two parts of the Shulchan Aruch, which was Choshen Mishpat and Even HaEzer. So that's like a master's. And then if you want to become a dayan, then you would learn all of Choshen Mishpat and all of Even HaEzer, and that's getting a doctorate or becoming a professor.
You explain it so beautifully.
Rabbi Riskin opened up his institute, and it happened that Abigail and I joined this fourth cohort. We weren't at the fourth level to get licensed. We were one of the first women to be licensed. You have to go through a battery of very impossible exams that are administered by the chief rabbinate of the state of Israel. Just to give you an idea of how difficult it was, not only in terms of the material, as I said, the material is Choshen Mishpat and Even HaEzer, the two lesser learned sections of the Shulchan Aruch. If the material starts, in essence, from the Psukim of the Torah, goes through the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Rishonim, the Shulchan Aruch, of course, and the Nosei Kelim of the Shulchan Aruch, and then the Achronim, and the Achronei Achronim, all the way till today. And if you just picture a page of the Shulchan Aruch, which is behind me, you have the heavy font in the middle on top, and then everything else is like in Ktav Rashi, and as you go down the page, it gets smaller and smaller, the font. And that's what we had to know by heart and to understand it. Okay, so on the first day of class, I believe that Abigail was 22 years old, and I was 38 or 39. All right, so there was like an age gap between us. The administrator of the program, Nurit Fried, walks in and says, "We are having a battle with the chief rabbinate because they do not want to allow women to sit for exams, and they want to double the material." This is the first day of class. The first thing she said to us, we're about 14 women in the class. Not everybody survived. This was like a very sink or swim situation. So she said, "You have to take a test on Hanukkah." This was in October. She said, if you want to be considered like grandfather claused in before the chief rabbin makes even more trouble for the women, you have to take your first exam this Hanukkah. She hands us a booklet of the protocols of how a court case is held, or protocols. You're ordinarily tested on this after you learn Choshen Mishpat, because it's all based on Choshen Mishpat. Okay? But no, we had to learn the whole booklet, and it doesn't make very much sense in here.
In 8 weeks.
8 weeks or less. It wasn't in standard Hebrew. It's in halacha Hebrew, basically. And in legal. It was very much in legalese. Okay, so she hands it out. And then after this announcement, there was like a little break. And this young woman walks up to me, very full of energy, short hair, no kisui rosh, because she wasn't married. And she says, I don't know why. I never asked her why. And Abigail says to me, I didn't know her name. We were all brand new there. And she said, would you like to be my chavruta? And we'll study together. And we'll study this choberet, this book together, this booklet. I said, okay. And that was the beginning of a phenomenal relationship. Now, phenomenal. Because the word chavruta, it can either mean a study partner, or it can mean a friend. We started off in the essence of study partner, but we became yedidei nefesh. We became connected in our very souls. And it wasn't necessarily because we were similar in our mode of thought. We would argue a lot about what the Shulchan Aruch was saying, or what this Rishon was saying, or that Rishon was saying. We would sit there and argue, and then out of the argument of learning together, we would clarify. It would become clear. It would get to the essence of why was this Rishon arguing with that Rishon, and what were the different points that they were relating to, what was more important to this Rishon in this issue, and there was something else more important to that Rishon in the same issue, and that's why they were arguing. In other words, we understood it to a tremendous depth. Now, this wasn't the way that most students of Tina Rabbanit learned. Now, most of the other women had very good memories, which I do not. I could not memorize verbatim by heart. We learned for over 3 years together from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. Now, and we went down deep into the depths of the Torah, of the halakha we were learning, and understood how it developed, understood exactly the process of psika, of issuing
the evolution of a psak.
Yes, and why? Not only the evolution. In other words, it's not this one said this one, and 100 years later, the other one based himself and then said this one, and another 100 years later, and another posik sits related and collected the different dayot and said something else. We understood the tenets, the foundation of the process of psika. And that made us different from everyone else. How do I know that we were different from everyone else besides understanding it and feeling it? We had to go through a battery. Every Hanukkah and every Erev Pesach, they don't care though, we were women, on a certain number of simanim in Even Ezer or a certain number of simanims in Choshen Mishpat. And we went through a battery test over 2 years. And then we went through another test afterwards, a Baal Peh test, an oral exam in front of 3 Dayanim.
Wow.
Yeah, and not everybody passed any of the tests. But in any case, in one of the tests, they were so messy that they didn't give us grades. They didn't give us grades. A secretary would call us and say, you passed or you failed.
Wow.
But these tests took up so much. We wanted to know our grade. So Abigail had somehow a contact with one of the Rabbanim in the Moetzah Datit in Yerushalayim. Exam was not registered under your name. It was under your Tudat Zehut number, your identity number. Okay, so theoretically, they couldn't tell the difference between the men and the women. Now, how do I know that Abigail was only 22 years old? Because that same law said that in order to practice, you had to be 24 years old and married or have been married. And she was neither. But by the time we took the last oral exam, she was married.
So that means that you're saying that she thought ahead. She said, I'm going to start now that by the time I'm done, I'll be already, Bezat Hashem, married.
It's right, which brings me to the next.
Chacham einav berosho.
So here comes an amusing point, that the studies were 2 days a week, I think from 8 in the morning till 6 at night. And the other days of the week, Abigail and I would sit and learn together from the morning till 10 at night.
Wow.
She's more or less moved into my family's house.
Wow.
She moved in, and a few funny stories. And she moved in, and then we learned from Sunday to Friday. And she, at 10 o'clock at night, that would be it for me. I was out. And that's when she started going out on dates.
Wow.
So I got the lowdown also about the guys she was going out with. And to bring you up to speed, when Yehuda and Abigail were going out, so I heard all about it, obviously, because she was living in my house, basically.
Mm.
And my husband and I went on a 2-day vacation to the Galil,
Mm-hmm.
and Abigail was the babysitter. I had 7 kids.
So she became a bat bite by you.
She was completely bat bite. My husband would criticize her.
איזה מיוחד.
He would criticize her all the time because she never finished her milk in her cereal, because they had to have the right balance.
Right.
So he would always tease her about it and say, in this house, you have to finish your milk. So she was babysitting while we were on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
She was sleeping in a bedroom in the bottom floor in the basement, and she was supposed to be giving the kids supper. And Yehuda came, and he came to the house with a bouquet of flowers. They went down to the basement, okay?
Unannounced? Like,
Yeah.
he came unannounced.
Came unannounced. And they went down to the basement, and they were in the room in the basement, and they didn't know that we had an intercom in the house. So the kids turned on the intercom in the kitchen and listened in, and that's when Yehuda proposed.
Really? In your house? He proposed in your house. איזה מיוחד. So you really were so involved in her house.
And then she calls me when I was in Kiryat Shmona, and we were there with friends, and she says, say Mazel Tov.
Wow. So what year of learning was this? Like, how far along was she in the study?
I think this was our third. This was after we finished the formal studies for
Mhm.
2 years. We learned.
Mhm.
This was the third year that we spent studying for exams.
Mhm.
We started with the first exam as we started off this conversation,
Mhm.
2 months after we entered the program. And throughout the process, we took every year at least 2 exams, 2 more exams.
Right.
Another in Choshen Mishpat and Even Ezer, a couple of times. Look, she asked that rabbi friend of hers going back to find out what grade we got on this particularly difficult exam. She asked her connection to find out what grades we got. So he came back and he said that they didn't give numbers. They gave Nechshal, failed, Over, pass, Tov Me'od, B'Hatzlacha, and Hatzlacha Rabbah.
Wow. הצלחה רבה.
Okay, now this is an exam that was taken by men and women, everybody together. And he said there were only 2 people that got Hatzlacha Rabbah. Yeah, and that was us. Yeah,
Wow. What a privilege.
yeah.
Wow.
That's what I was saying. Learning in this program. The program has since closed, and there's no program that teaches to this depth. Other program. There are other programs that claim to train you, but it's not the same. This was the greatest zchut to be able to learn Torah, and this is what brought both Abigail and myself to decide to go into the program. Not because we thought, oh, we're going to be a Torah Rabbanit. We didn't know that we would succeed, because we knew that it would be impossible to succeed, because the entire rabbinic system in Israel, the official framework of the rabbinate, was against women joining.
The
Because
philosophy was,
women can't learn Gemara. Women can't learn. It's usher, that type of thing. But we did, and we passed as a group. we passed the exams at a higher rate than the men. And that's what got the Rabbanut and the men who want to be the Toanim very scared.
Mm.
Okay, because the average of the men, or the men, and these are all men that were sitting in yeshiva for years and learning. Okay, 1/3 would pass and 2/3 would fail.
Hmm.
These are really difficult exams.
Right.
When the women started in this program, and the women that were accepted to this program were all academics or had done equivalent studies to academia. We were all tested before we were accepted to this program. They only accepted women that they thought could handle it. And then there were dropouts.
Mm-hmm.
While only 1/3 of the men passed the exams, 2/3 of the women passed the exams.
Wow.
Right?
Incredible.
So that's another lecture I can give about how it happened that we were able to, at the point, that first day of school, we were in a battle with the chief rabbinate. So you had to have the nerves for it, right? Because we were all used to listening to Rabbanim. It's a political thing.
Interesting.
It is an interesting story behind it. But at the end, they had to allow the women to sit for the exams. And we did. Another interesting point is that I think the second year of our studies, our teachers were Rabbanim that taught men, that taught halacha to men in yeshivot hesder or in all sorts of programs. And we once asked one of our teachers, one of the Rabbanim, we felt confident enough like to engage him in this topic. We once asked one teacher who is now a Rosh Yeshiva, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Rosh Yeshiva. At the time he wasn't. He was a Ram, a Rebbe. He was Rosh Yeshiva. And we said, he taught what's called Shiur Vav in Yeshivat Hesder. That's the 6th year of being in Yeshivat Hesder. And we asked him, at what level are you teaching us compared to Yeshiva student? And he said, what are you talking about? The same level, Shiur Vav.
Wow.
In other words, that's what I meant by sink or swim. All of a sudden, we who had not been sitting learning Gemara since elementary school, all of a sudden had to delve in.
Unbelievable.
Okay, then we asked another teacher, do you see a difference between the way women learn and men learn? So he said, immediately answered, he said, absolutely. You women are constantly taking what we're learning and applying it to reality and asking me questions, what if this, what if that, and how would you do this, that? And he said, the men, you teach men. Okay, you taught them, they understand.
Have you ever asked Avigail why she went on such a big endeavor, like so early on in her life, and what was her passion to it?
The passion I could see. The passion was learning Torah.
She didn't go in order to become a Toenet Rabbanit.
I never asked her because I also went in to learn Torah. That was my main goal, and I chose that program because I understood that it was on the highest level, and I also understood that I might not pass the licensing exams. Even if you got 100 on every exam in the institute, right? That didn't mean that you would pass the licensing exam. I think that, but once you were in there, after a while, even if you didn't come in order to become a Toenet, it became obvious that you have to do this, right? Now, Avigail, I never asked her why she started with this. I think it may also have been to have a rabbinic type of parnasa. In other words, if you pass the exams, then you had a profession. Okay? But it was clearly for the love of learning. Why do I say clearly? Because after we finished and after we got our licenses, right, she went on to keep on learning. In other words, we both went to Bar-Ilan University. I continued in the Talmud department, and she continued in the Tanakh, the department of Tanakh. And then she became an expert in the Mefarshim, the Middle Ages, in the medieval Parshanim of the Tanakh. And she got her doctorate in that. So it's clearly that she wanted to keep on learning. And she wrote amazing shiurim, long shiurim, that appeared, I think, as one of the first women who had something published in Yeshivat Har Etzion's virtual Beit Midrash. There's a whole bunch of them that you can still find. And she wrote about different Parshanim. and studied them in depth.
When you were learning with her, what
What was
part?
the process? Okay, let me just tell you. We both had a million sforim open on the table, okay? And we both had notebooks that we would write, and we would write out our thoughts. We also based ourselves on the notes that we took in class. And we would go to the source and read the source, and Abigail would make these funny flow charts on her paper. She would start with a rectangle, make a line, go to a circle, and go to a diamond, make another line, and go to a different shape. And that was her thought process. She would write like the bottom line, so to speak, within these little shapes. I did it differently. I wrote it out, and I used colored markers. Okay, now we really spent basically our whole lives. We took off from life,
Right.
and we sat and we learned. And we would learn at our dining room table because we needed a very big table for all our sforim. And my husband was in charge of taking care of the kids. Okay, we learned on the dining room table, which is the center of the house, and my husband would take care of the kids. And we're oblivious to what's going on. We're sitting and learning. We're very intense. And then all of a sudden, a row of kids holding signs starts to march around us in the dining room table, chanting, "We want attention. We want," with the signs. So we looked up, we laughed, we went back to the books.
Wow. Wow.
I want to explain something to you. We did this very deeply, as I said. And I went on to become the director of the Aguna and Get Refusal project of Young Israel and the Jewish Agency. And at the same time, before I got involved with an organization, towards the end of our studies, I started writing prenuptial agreements, halachic prenuptial agreements for the prevention of get refusal. That's about me, but I just said that, and I became the author, together with two other rabbis, of what's called the Agreement for Mutual Respect, Haskem Kavod Hadadi, which is the Israeli version of the halachic prenup in America. Put that aside. And one of my aims in having the project for the prevention of get refusal and agunot was disseminating this particular prenuptial agreement, the Agreement for Mutual Respect, Haskem Kavod Hadadi. And that was my focus since the year 2000, one of my focuses, since the year 2000. I think it was the year before Avigail Rock passed away. I made an event as part of my project in Bet Shemesh, in the shul called Ohel Yonah Umenachem. Okay? It was Rav Meir Lichtenstein's shul. And he suggests to all couples where he is their Masada Kedushin, he asks them to sign the Haskem Kavod Hadadi. Okay? So he agreed to have an educational event in his shul, and it was actually joined by 5 other shuls. Like 6 shuls got together and had this event together with Young Israel, with my project. And there were 3 speakers at this event, in Hebrew, obviously. 3 speakers. Rav Meir Lichtenstein was the first, Avigail was the second, and I was the third.
Wow.
Avigail gave the most amazing, brilliant lecture that I have ever heard. And I had already been doing this for about 19 or 20 years. I had been lecturing about this for 19 or 20 years. And she gave such a powerful lecture,
Wow.
basing it on the development of the halacha of takanot kahal. And it was just simply brilliant, with the punchline being that the entire society has to take upon itself a takanat kahal, that every couple has to sign this. And she taught it from within halacha.
Beautiful.
It was fantastic. It was extraordinary. And she gave that lecture because she strongly believed in what I was doing. She strongly believed in it.
Yeah.
And that lecture can be found there's a website dedicated to Abigail's memory. After we both were licensed and we started working as Toanot Rabbaniot, she did work as a Toanot Rabbanit before she became a full-time teacher,
Mm-hmm.
we decided that we had gained so much understanding and knowledge of the required simanim of the Shulchan Aruch that you had to study and be tested on to get a license as a Tohen Rabbani, that we were going to write a book and explain it. We proposed that idea to a certain institution, and they said, great idea. Go ahead, start. Well, we only did one chapter because after the first chapter, they backed out. Okay. But we did do this one chapter together. We had a certain vision of explaining a siman in the Shulchan Aruch, seif after seif, clause after clause, and we had it printed up. And I gave it the name. We called it Choshen LeMishpat. And we did, for anybody who's interested, we did the siman in Even HaEzer, siman Ayin Aleph, about the obligation of a man to support his children.
Mm.
And there are all sorts of machlokot in there. And one very complicated machloket that is very difficult to understand until we analyzed it and understood what was really going on in this machloket.
Right.
It's a three-way machloket, and they were all, in essence, focusing on three different parts of the issue. And we printed it up. You can find that chapter also on the site dedicated to Avigail's memory.
Mm.
It's very interesting to learn.
Yeah.
And at Avigail's Shloshim, I spoke about it. In other words, I gave a little shir about that particular complicated seif, because that was Abigail's Torah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. If you can summarize some of the halichot that describes Avigail. So we hear a lot about her avat Torah, avat limud, like a true ahava to Torah and understanding it. What other attributes do you say that's Avigail?
Simcha. She was full of simcha, and that made her very endearing to my kids. And as my kids loved her, and my kids will never forget her wedding, because she invited all my children to the wedding. And for some of them, it was first wedding that they were at, but they remember Abigail being picked up like a cake, like a doll of a kala on a cake, because she was on a round base of a table, and she was sitting there, and she had a very wide dress. She was full of simcha, yet she had she could, if she was trying to explain that something was right, she could say it very emphatically, in very strong terms. I don't ever recall speaking Lashon Hara with her at all. I don't recall that. We spoke a lot about issues, and we spoke about, of course, families, and I got to know, of course, her parents very well. In fact, her brother, Avram, and her mother, Chani, made the shidduch for my second son.
That's so beautiful. So she was really integrated in your family for years, not only for that few years of you becoming Toanot Rabbaniyot. It continued a friendship, a yedidat nefesh for you and your mishpacha.
Not only that, but they came to us for Shabbos. We went to them for Shabbos. And her children, particularly the girls, I became close to.
Beautiful. Do you recall when you were studying any chapter of the Gemara that she was very connected to and passionate about, that she felt like she wants to do something about it in her lifetime or teach more about it, that she really resonated and connected to it?
I don't recall something in particular, because she did go on and teach in the same program, which changed a little bit. It changed after we left. The program, it was the students that registered, that came to the program, were all much younger. They were all in their 20s. When we went, we had, Abigail was the youngest, she was 22, and we had till over 60.
Wow.
Wide variety. At a certain point, Abigail started to teach. in the Tomanot program. She did that, I don't know how long, about 2 years. She was able to impart from her knowledge and her style of learning
Mm-hmm.
the younger women. But then she
Beautiful.
went on to Tanakh more after that. But just to add to your last question, if there was an issue that she was passionate about, as I was agunot,
Yeah.
atarat agunot,
Yeah.
that when she worked as a toilet, that's what she was dealing with.
That's beautiful. We did this in order to continue her legacy. And she really left a huge mark on this world. And we miss her so much. And we miss her thought process. What can you share with people if they want to bring Avigail into their day-to-day life? How could they do it? You knew her so well. How do you bring Avigail into your day-to-day life? And what can others do to continue her legacy?
I think in order to continue her legacy, women have to not be afraid to really sit down and learn specifically Torah Sheba'al Peh, and to learn halacha, and to not just to swallow what you're taught, but to apply all your mental faculties and all your life experience to understand how to, it's like funny that I'm saying a double word here, to understand how to understand the depth of halacha
Mm-hmm.
and how to apply it today, how you can apply it today. If you can really understand the thought process of the poskim, not just from reading a tshuva, and he quotes this one and quotes that one and quotes this one and that one, and says, I think about this one, that, but to understand the logic and the building upon. And there's a phrase in halacha, damot milta milta. In other words, you can compare one thing to be similar to another thing that you have clear halachot on, and to apply to others. That is the process of psikah. And that's what we, without any guidance, in other words, we were taught the same way as all the other women in the classroom, right? But because of our learning together, we discovered that. We went down that path together. It's also important to learn halacha and know what the Shulchan Aruch says. So if somebody calls you and says, I put a milking spoon into my pot of chicken soup by mistake, you know what to say. You know what to say because you learned the Shulchan Aruch. But if somebody calls you with a much more difficult question, that's when you have to go through a thought process, an intense thought process, in order to be able to figure out a new situation. It's not, it's this situation isn't mentioned, not in the Shulchan Aruch, not in the Rishonim, not in the Achronim. We live in such a complicated new world. All sorts of situations are arising, and we need women also to be able to handle that.
So to continue her legacy, continue her way of women understanding halacha, complex, to analyze it properly.
Being willing to challenge somebody else and explain why you're challenging somebody else together all the time, challenging each other.
That's so beautiful. What do you do when you feel like there's an Avigail moment that you want to share something with her or think together? What do you do at that moment? Do you talk to her?
I think about her and I say, I wish I could share this with you. And, or I might say, look, Abigail, look at this.
Oh.
Going on, look at what happened. We were blessed.
Yeah. And she's so missed. And that's why I think it's so important to continue sharing her greatness, because not everybody was zoche to be a chavuta with her. What a zchut, right? So beautiful. Rachel, thank you for sharing. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope one day I get to meet you and hear more about the greatness of Avigail and moments of funny moments. A lot of people are sharing how she had humor in her. Yeah.
The humor was part of her simcha.
Right.
It's connected.
Right.
Connected. And her simcha also was connected to being able to love. We really loved each other.
Beautiful.
And just saw the best in each other.
I love the way that you don't remember speaking Lashon Hara, and her friend shared with me that even if she disagreed with a certain derech, she never put somebody down just because they were different. She respected everybody for their derech and for their malach hachaim.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Beautiful. A giant, mamash. Thank you for sharing the memories.
Thank you for taking on this project.
And may her neshama have an aliyah.